I lived through something I wouldn't wish on anyone. Karen's son slipped into my home in the dead of night while my wife and child slept just down the hall. And his excuse? He claimed his mom runs the HOA, so he had every right to do whatever he pleased. The irony is I kept my temper in check, but when all was said and done, it was the chief who handed out the warrant. Let me rewind. It started with a sound. Not a crash, not shattering glass, something quieter. A creak, the kind of complaint a floorboard makes when it carries weight it shouldn't. I was asleep, but some instinct, the father in me, the protector, snapped awake. The clock glowed red in the darkness. 12:17 a.m. beside me, Tina breathed softly, steady and unaware. But the house wasn't at peace anymore. I heard it again. A faint shuffle, coming from downstairs. My pulse didn't race, it sank, heavy and cold, like a stone hitting ice. I eased out of bed, my bare feet silent from years of practice sneaking past a sleeping baby. Max was older now, but I'd never lost that skill. I reached for the bedroom door, my fingers closing around the cool knob. No gun, no weapon. Just my hands, my mind, and one thought: protect Max. His room sat at the far end of the hallway. The door was closed. Relief for the moment. Moonlight bled faintly through the landing window, sketching outlines in the dark. I crept forward until I reached the top of the stairs. From below, a glow bluish, shifting the light of a phone. Someone was in my living room. Heat surged in me then, chasing away the ice. This was my house, my family's refuge. I descended, one step at a time, praying the old stairs wouldn't betray me. The light moved about the room, brushing across the TV, the shelves, the framed photos of my family. Not a pro, too clumsy. Too careless. At the bottom I saw him. A teen in a hoodie, back to me, fiddling with Max's game console as if deciding whether to pocket it. I closed the distance, clamped my hand on his shoulder. He yelped, dropping the console onto the couch, phone clattering to Pfeffler. The screen lit his face. Kyle Carson, 14, my son's classmate. The kid from 3 houses down. His look wasn't fear, it was defiance, irritation, as if I were inconveniencing him. "What are you doing?" he barked. My voice was low, tight, dangerous. "What are you doing in my house, Kyle?" He smirked. Not the expression of a child caught red-handed, but of someone who'd never faced a consequence. "Just looking," he sneered. "I can go where I want." I tightened my grip. A flicker of fear cracked through his bravado. "No," I said, voice rough as gravel. "You can't." Then he dropped the words that changed everything. The words that started a war. "My mom runs the HOA," he spat. "I can." That grin made my blood boil. "You think rules beat locks?" I shot back. He shrugged toward the mantel. "We log violations." "My mom's got notes on you." "Notes don't open doors," I growled. He twisted in my grasp, sleeve sliding back to reveal a stamped wrist from some arcade or party. Just a kid, but arrogant enough to believe he was untouchable. "Put the console down," I said. "It's not theft," he muttered. "The HOA needs to check serial numbers. That's not a rule." "That's a lie." A floorboard groaned upstairs, Max. My stance shifted, shielding the stairs from Kyle. He smirked again. "Call the cops." "I'll be home in an hour." "Maybe," I replied, nodding at the door camera. "But this video lasts forever." Smile. Light flicked on upstairs. "Jake? Everything okay?" Tina's voice calm, but laced with concern. "Stay upstairs, Tina," I called. "Call 911. Kyle's mask cracked. Fear crept in. "No, don't. My mom will kill me." He struggled, but he was wiry, too weak to break free. Tina's voice stayed steady as she gave the dispatcher our address, details crisp and calm. She'd always been the strong one under pressure. Minutes later, flashing red and blue painted our walls. Officers stepped inside. I handed Kyle over, his bravado long gone, tears streaking his face. He wasn't invincible anymore, he was just a boy in cuffs. They explained he'd be taken to juvenile detention, not adult jail. His mother was on her way. "Karen Carson?" one officer asked. I nodded, dread settling in my stomach. I knew her. Clipboard in hand, sharp-eyed, ruling our street as if it were her empire. Hours later, silence returned. Kyle processed and released. Tina and I stood in the quiet, holding each other, thinking it was over. Thinking justice had been done. But Kyle's words echoed in my head. My mom runs the HOA. I couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The next morning, sunlight felt strange, like it didn't belong. Max came down for breakfast, eyes darkened by what he'd overheard. "Kyle broke in?" he asked, voice small. "Why?" I had no good answer. "Sometimes people make terrible choices," I said, hating how hollow it sounded. He pushed his cereal aside, anger and fear mixing on his face. This wasn't a stranger. It was a classmate. Someone he saw every day. The weight pressed on him as he slung his backpack over his shoulder. "Be careful at the bus stop," I told him. He nodded, carrying more than just books out the door. How far will a man go to protect his family? It wasn't just a question anymore. It was real. Sitting in my kitchen, etched in my son's frightened eyes. The rest of that day blurred into paperwork, police reports, insurance calls, photos of scuffed floors and broken lamps. My old project manager instincts kicked in. Details mattered. Timelines mattered. And something told me we'd need every one of them. Paperwork mattered. I had a gut feeling I was going to need a mountain of it before this was over. By 4 p.m., Max came home. But it wasn't like usual, no bag dropped by the door, no rush to the fridge. He slipped inside quietly, closing the door with care. Then he vanished straight into his room. Tina and I exchanged a look. I climbed the stairs, knocked. "Max, you okay?" Silence lingered, then a faint reply. "Yeah." "I'm fine." He wasn't. I pushed the door open. He sat at the edge of his bed, staring down at his phone. His face pale, a streak of dirt across his cheek, and the sleeve of his jacket torn. "What happened?" I asked, easing down beside him. He didn't look at me. "Nothing." Tina appeared in the doorway, worry carved into her face. She crossed the room, sat on his other side. "Honey, you can tell us," she said gently. That broke him. The words spilled out in a rush. At the bus stop, Kyle had been waiting. And he wasn't alone. 2 of his friends flanked him. They cornered Max. Kyle shoved him hard. He tripped over the curb, dirt smearing his cheek. "He called me a snitch," Max whispered, eyes glued to the floor. "Said his mom's gonna make us move. Said she'd ruin us." Hearing it, I felt ice crawl down my spine. Almost word for word, the threat I'd been dreading. It wasn't just the shove. Kyle had been blowing up Max's phone all day with messages. Tina gently took it from his hand. Her expression hardened as she scrolled. "Watch your back, Miller. My mom owns this street. You're done. Payback's coming." Max swallowed. "He shoved me twice." His friends laughed. "One of them filmed." "Filmed?" I asked sharply. Max nodded, showing me the screen. He sent it to a group, sighed. First warning. Tina's fingers moved quickly. Save. Date. Backup. Every message documented. Screenshots emailed to herself, to me, then uploaded into a new cloud folder. She named it Evidence Carson. While my fists clenched and unclenched with rage, she was already building our defense. She was the strategist. The calm to my storm. "We call the cops again," I said, voice low, vibrating with anger. "This is harassment, assault." "Yes," Tina agreed, locking eyes with me. "And we document every single thing." For the next hour, we stayed with Max. We told him he did nothing wrong, that we were proud of him. But I could see the crack in his armor. The bus stop, the school, even his own street places that should have been safe now carried shadows. I thought of Tommy across the street, always quick with a wave, always eager to talk about lawn care. He probably saw what happened from his window, but he'd never admit it. Karen ruled by fear, and fear silenced good people. That night, after filing another report, I stood at the front window. The cul-de-sac looked calm, bathed in the glow of streetlights, peaceful, but I knew better. It wasn't peace, it was a battlefield. And my son had been dragged onto it. The cold stone in my chest was gone, replaced by a furnace, slow, steady, burning hot. I glanced at the evidence folder Tina had started. Almost empty, just a few screenshots, a case number. But I knew it would fill quickly. They thought they could intimidate a child, break a family, bend us into submission. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The question wasn't how far I'd go anymore. The new question was, where do I begin? The answer came the very next morning with a pounding at my door. Not a knock, not polite, a steady hammering rhythm that echoed through the house. A sound designed to intimidate. I glanced at the ring feed on my phone. There she was, Karen Carson, dressed in a razor-sharp navy suit, clipboard in hand like a weapon. Her hair pulled back so tightly it looked painful. Her smile stretched thin, but her eyes, cold, flat, burning with rage. I drew in a breath. "I've got this," I told Tina. She was already in position near the window. Phone up, recording. This was it, the opening salvo. The declaration of war. I opened the door. "Good morning, Karen," I said evenly, leaning against the frame, my tone casual. The last thing she expected. "Mr. Miller," she said, smile tightening. "I was just doing my morning rounds and noticed some discrepancies with your property. Not a word about her son. Not a mention of the break-in, the arrest, the threats." She was rewriting the story, trying to erase the truth. Classic Karen. Discrepancies? I raised an eyebrow. "Please, enlighten me." She flipped her clipboard, tapping a page with a manicured nail. "Your lawn. Article 4, Section B, maximum grass height, 3 inches. Yours is closer to 3 1/4. She paused, expecting me to bristle. 3 1/4, I repeated, as though solving a math problem. "I see. Furthermore," she pressed on, emboldened by my calm, "your trash receptacles were visible from the street until 7:03 this morning. Section 6, paragraph key concealed by 7 a.m. sharp." I glanced toward the bins, tucked neatly beside the garage. 3 minutes, I mused dryly. The horror! Across the street, Tommy's blinds twitched, his silhouette frozen, watching. Karen noticed, raised her voice like she was playing to an audience. "Rules protect value, Mr. Miller." "You mean your value," I said flatly. "Everyone's," she countered with a sharper smile. Then she leaned in, her voice dropping for me alone. "Pay, or life gets very busy around here." Tina's phone caught every word. I tilted my head toward the camera mounted above. Karen's gaze flicked upward instinctively. Her smile wavered, just a fraction. My calm was rattling her. "These rules are for everyone's benefit," she insisted, her mask slipping. "Maybe if you spent less time filing frivolous police reports, you'd have more time to be a considerate neighbor." There it was. The jab. "My son being assaulted isn't frivolous," I said, my voice low. "And a break-in? Not frivolous either." Her face hardened. "My son is a good boy. Easily led astray." Your son seems to be the instigator. The audacity hit me like a punch. She was flipping the script, casting Max as the villain. My blood roared hot in my veins, but I forced myself to stay steady. Stick to the plan. Let her reveal herself. And finally, she said, tone dripping sweet venom, this porch light, she gestured at the new floodlight I'd installed after the break-in, is not an approved fixture. A serious violation. She yanked papers from her clipboard, thrust them at me. Here are your fines. $500 for the lawn, $200 for the trash, and $1,000 for the unapproved fixture. You have 30 days to pay, $1,700. For crimes that didn't exist, it was extortion, plain and simple. I took the stack of papers from her hand with slow, deliberate motion. I scanned them once, then looked back up at her. I didn't shout. I didn't give her the outburst she wanted. Instead, I offered a tight, controlled smile. Thanks, Karen, I said. I'll make sure these get filed. Confusion and fury passed across her face. That wasn't the reaction she'd rehearsed. She wanted a scene, screams, threats, anything she could use as ammunition. My calm ate her control. You'd be smart to pay them. Jake, she hissed, dropping the neighborly mask and using my first name like a weapon. People who fight the HOA fine life gets very difficult. We have a highly effective security team. We monitor compliance closely. The threat came cloaked in civility her little family-run enforcement arm implied. She could make life miserable. She couldn't lawfully stop a sale, but she could make things costly and painful. I nodded slowly. Noted. Then I shut the door in her face. The latch clicked like the cocking of a gun. Tina came to me, phone still warm in her hand. I recorded all of it, she said, voice low. Every word. Every threat. I looked down at the fines, absurd, insulting, and felt a strange clarity. This wasn't just spite. It was an invitation. She'd tried to bury us in paperwork. Instead, she'd handed me the tools to dig her own grave. Paper creates a trail, and every trail leads somewhere. Our dining table became headquarters. That stack of fines sat in the middle like a monument to her arrogance. But it no longer represented power. It was exhibit A. For the rest of the afternoon, Tina and I turned rage into work. My project manager brain kicked in spreadsheets, timelines, cross-references. I pulled the thick HOA binder from the shelf, the covenants we'd barely glanced at since moving in, and opened it beside Karen's demand. Then began the methodical, almost surgical, paper chase. The lawn fine was first. Article 4, Section B, lawn must be neatly maintained. No inches mentioned, no numeric threshold. A rule that depended on opinion isn't enforceable. I highlighted the passage, scanned it, labeled it. Find one lawn rule not specific. Next, the trash citation. Section 6, paragraph C. Receptacles to be concealed by 7 a.m. I dug through old emails and pulled up the management company's welcome packet from 3 years earlier. An addendum clarified the pickup schedule had changed and the deadline had been moved to 8 o'clock. The rule she cited was obsolete. I scanned that, saved it. Fine 2. Trash rule outdated. A grim satisfaction began to grow. This wasn't incompetence. It felt deliberate counting on people not checking. The big one was the porch light. I combed the covenants for any pre-approved fixture. List. Nothing. There was a clause about architectural changes needing approval and a 30-day review window for applications, hardly a same-day fine. Her penalty was fabrication. I documented it, calm and precise. While I wrestled with paper, Tina dove into digital digging. Jake, look, she said, turning her laptop toward me. The security company listed on Karen's notice, Maplehurst Security Services LLC, showed up in the state registry. Registered agent, Frank Carson, Frank? A social profile popped up, Frank standing next to Karen at a family barbecue. The company had been formed 6 months ago, used a P.O. box in a neighboring town, and left no digital footprint, no website, no reviews. A shell. She was funneling HOA money into a family racket. Pieces clicked into place. Tina kept going. Old news clippings surfaced 5 years earlier in another development. An HOA president had been ousted amid accusations of mismanagement and creating a hostile environment. The name, Karen Peterson, her maiden name. This was not an isolated tantrum. This was a pattern. A practice. A grift. I needed proof that this was more than my fight. I needed neighbors. Cameras were everywhere on our cul-de-sac, black eyes on eaves recording everything. I thought of Tommy across the street, fussing over petunias. He'd probably seen something. He was friendly but timid, easily cowed. I decided to go to the Wilsons next door. Retirees, quiet people, but their garage cam pointed right at the side of our house. George opened the door, worried. "Jake, everything okay?" He'd seen the squad cars. He'd seen Karen on my porch. "I need your help," I said. "Karen's targeting us. I think she's doing it to others, too. I need to prove a pattern." He hesitated, then whatever fear was holding him loosened. "What do you need?" he asked. "Your garage cam footage from the night of the break-in," we scrolled. And there it was, time-stamped at 12:03 a.m. Kyle Carson creeping along the Wilsons' fence, trying the sliding glass door handle, rattling a locked window, then hopping the low fence into my yard. Undeniable. He'd been casing houses, looking for an opening. This was attempted burglary, not a stupid prank. I copied the file to a thumb drive and felt like I was holding a key dot between the video, the outdated rules she weaponized, the fake security company, and the pattern in the archives. I had something real, evidence she couldn't easily dismiss. But I also knew retaliation was likely. She would double down, escalate. So I started planning a counter, something ironclad, so blatant the law would have to act. Something that would leave no room for her to wiggle free. The idea struck me on a walk to the curb. That mailbox, black metal, ordinary, forgotten, suddenly felt like a weak point. A place where secrets could be stolen. The flag was down, but I hadn't lowered it. I opened a little door. Junk flyer, grocery circular, and a bill. I picked up the bill. Something felt wrong. The seal wasn't quite right, slightly loose, like it had been opened with care, then pressed shut again. My chest tightened. Someone had been inside my mail. They weren't just nosy. They were hunting, searching for a lawyer's notice, a court summons, any sign of my next move. This wasn't HOA harassment anymore. This was tampering with U.S. mail, a federal crime. Stupid, reckless, and for me, the perfect chance to turn the tables. But suspicion wasn't enough. I needed proof. I needed to catch them in the act. That afternoon, I drove to the craft store. Past the flowers, past the yarn, into the paint section. There it was, a tiny tube of invisible ultraviolet paint. Clear in daylight, but under a black light, it burned a bright, unmissable green. I grabbed a cheap UV keychain light too. The trap was simple, almost childish, but it would work. Back home, I prepared the bait. A plain envelope, fake law firm letterhead, Smith, Jones and Associates. Inside, I typed a vague legal notice. Pending action, property disputes, discovery to begin soon. Just enough to tempt a paranoid bully. I sealed the envelope. With a toothpick, I dabbed a microscopic dot of UV paint right on the flap seam. To the naked eye, nothing. But if opened, that tiny dot would smear a glowing green fingerprint of guilt. Still, I needed more. I needed to know who. The next morning, before the mail carrier arrived, I set the stage. From storage, I pulled my old wildlife camera. camouflaged, motion activated. I nestled it in the dense azalea bush across my driveway, perfectly angled at the mailbox. I tested it, armed it. Then I waited out. Only after the mailman came and went did I slip the decoy letter inside and raise the flag. My nerves buzzed all day. Every passing car made me twitch toward the window. It felt like fishing line cast, waiting for the tug. Across the street, neighbor Tommy was watering roses. He waved. "Mail early today, Jake?" He called, chuckling. "Heard Karen's been snooping mailboxes for unapproved catalogs." He laughed, but his tone was brittle. He suspected something, though he didn't dare say more. I forced a smile and waved back. If only you knew. Hours crawled by. Then, around 3 p.m., I saw him. Kyle Carson. Headphones slung around his neck, pretending to stroll casually, but his eyes flickered toward my house. He walked past the mailbox, stopped, turned back. He checked the street, then slipped open the little door. He rifled through the contents and froze when he saw it, the fake legal envelope. His face lit with greedy curiosity. He tucked it under his arm and hurried back toward his house. My hidden camera caught everything. My pulse hammered as I watched from the window. "10 minutes later, he returned. Quick glance around, then he slid the envelope back inside and hurried off. To the naked eye, it looked untouched. I waited 30 minutes more before retrieving it. The seal was neat, clean, almost perfect. Almost inside my dark laundry room, I clicked on the black light. The purple beam washed across the flap. And there it was, the glowing green smear where the dot had been. And faint, but unmistakable, the trace of a fingerprint glowing on the paper. Kyle had done it. He'd actually broken into my mail. I retrieved the wildlife camera, plugged the memory card into my laptop. The video was crystal clear. Kyle opening the mailbox. Kyle pocketing my letter. Kyle returning it. Federal crime, caught red-handed. This wasn't petty fines or HOA squabbles anymore. This was serious. Karen thought she ruled our block. But federal law wasn't her playground. Holding the thumb drive with the footage felt like clutching a live grenade. Too dangerous to ignore. This wasn't for the HOA board or even patrol cops anymore. It was time to escalate. I called the non-emergency police line, asked for property crimes. A gruff voice answered. "Detective Miller." I couldn't help a dry laugh. "No relation, I hope," he chuckled back, low and weary. "Not unless you've got cousins in law enforcement." And just like that, the game changed. I spent nearly 20 minutes laying it all out, starting from the break-in and ending with the tampered mail. I kept it clean, factual, step by step, every piece of evidence lined up. I told him about the harassment toward my son, the fake fines, the sham security outfit, and even the neighbor's footage. I could hear his keyboard clicking as I spoke. But when I described the ultraviolet paint and the hidden wildlife camera, his typing stopped. "You did what?" he asked, and for the first time, there was something new in his voice. "Not just duty interest." "Yes, sir," I answered. "And I've got video of the HOA president's son stealing the letter and putting it back minutes later." Silence hung for a long moment. Finally, he said, "Mr. Miller, I think we need to talk face to face. Can you come down to the station this afternoon?" Bring everything. When I walked into the detective bureau, I wasn't empty-handed. My binder was thick with documents, and the thumb drive burned in my pocket like a loaded weapon. Detective Miller was a big man, late 50s maybe, with a tired face but sharp eyes that missed nothing. He let me go through it page by page, watching patiently. He viewed the clips Kyle caught trying a neighbor's door, the bus stop harassment, the mailbox heist. Each video stacked higher and higher against them. When Kyle's face appeared crystal clear on screen, committing a federal crime, the detective leaned back and let out a low whistle. "This kid's on a one-way track to nowhere," he muttered. "And his mother?" "She's the one driving the bus." He seemed especially interested when I mentioned Maplerist Security Services, LLC. He tapped the name Frank Carson into his computer, and his expression soured. "I know this guy. Few assault charges, nothing that stuck. A hothead. A dangerous one." Then he laid out his plan. He'd pull in the U.S. postal inspectors for the mailbox crime. But the bigger picture, the harassment, the intimidation, the bogus fines, all of it looked like a racket hiding under an HOA charter. "This Karen," he said, "she's weaponizing her position to squeeze her neighbors. We can't let it slide. But to shut it down, we need to catch them live. Right now it's your word against theirs. Even with video, that won't cut it." He slid me his personal cell number. "She threatened you with her so-called security crew. They're coming sooner or later. When they do, don't dial 911. Call me directly. Stall them, keep them on site, but whatever you do, don't let them in." "Got it?" My pulse quickened. "Yes, and my wife, Tina, she's fast with her phone. She can stream video." His eyes lit up. "Perfect. If they show, you stall them at the door." She streamed straight to me. "We'll be ready." We didn't wait long. 2 nights later, we were clearing dinner plates when headlights swept across the front window. A white unmarked van stopped dead in front of our house, lights off, engine humming. My stomach turned to stone. "They're here," I whispered. Tina checked her phone, the Ring app buzzed. 2 big men were walking up the driveway, black Palas with a cheap maple leaf logo ironed onto the chest. Maplerist Security. One I didn't recognize. The other I knew instantly was Frank Carson, Karen's brother-in-law. They didn't just ring. One of them hammered the door with his fist. "HOA Security." A voice bellowed. "Open up." Mandatory nighttime inspection. My brain spun, but I followed orders. Phone recording in my hand. Tina already live streaming. "There's no such thing as a nighttime inspection," I said firmly through the door. "You're trespassing." "Leave my property now." Frank laughed, a nasty, low sound. "We don't take orders from you, Miller. Your house is out of compliance. We're authorized to check the premises." His flashlight beam cut across my windows, violating every corner of my home. "I've got the feed, detective," Tina whispered. Eyes glued to her phone dot, the other man rattled the gate violently. The sound echoed like a threat. Then Frank shoved the door hard. The frame shuddered. "Open up, Miller." "We know you're in there." I cracked the door, just enough to see. My mistake. Frank lunged, jamming his hand inside, shoving my shoulder. "You're gonna learn some respect," he snarled. It wasn't a hard hit, but it was enough. It was assault dot, and in that instant, I heard it. Faint at first, then louder the rising wail of sirens. They didn't know it, but the trap had never been for me. It was for them. Red and blue lights tore into the cul-de-sac. Police cruisers skidded into place, blocking every exit. An unmarked sedan slid to a stop right behind their van. The night exploded with flashing authority. The so-called guards froze. Their confidence drained into fear. Frank raised his hands in mock surrender. "Whoa, whoa, officers, easy. Just a misunderstanding. HOA Security, doing our rounds." The unmarked car door opened. Detective Miller stepped out, calm, unshaken. "Phone in hand? Your rounds?" he asked, voice cutting through the chaos. "Does that include trespassing, harassment, and assault?" He turned his phone screen toward Frank. The Ring footage played the shove, crystal clear. The color left Frank's face. He was uncooperative, Frank stammered. Uncooperative in his own home? While you impersonated a security force? Miller's voice was ice. Hands behind your backs. Officers moved in, swift, efficient. The metallic snap of handcuffs was sweeter than any music I'd ever heard. Then, right on cue, Karen burst from her front door, robe flapping, rage twisting her face. What is the meaning of this? She shrieked, her voice bouncing across the quiet street. That's my security team. I'm the HOA president. You have no right. Miller didn't even blink. Ma'am, your security team just committed assault. And it's all on video. They're under arrest, she screamed. I'll have your badge for this. I know the chief of police. Detective Miller's face didn't even twitch. I don't think you do, he said quietly, but he wasn't done. He brushed past her, walked to her front door, and knocked. Moments later, a stunned Mr. Carson opened it. We have a warrant for your son's arrest, Miller said. Kyle shuffled forward, pale and shaking. He saw the police cruisers, saw his uncle in cuffs, and his face collapsed. They cuffed him right there on his own porch. The charge, tampering with U.S. mail. Karen let out a sound that was half scream, half sob. She never saw this blow coming. But there was one more. A dark sedan rolled to a stop. A woman stepped out with a briefcase. Calm, professional. She spoke briefly with Miller, then walked toward Karen. Mrs. Carson, she said firmly. I'm with Child Protective Services. Given your son's arrest and this ongoing investigation, we'll need to speak with you and your husband immediately. That was the kill shot. The arrests were bad enough, but CPS? That was humiliation in front of every neighbor on their porch. Her kingdom of fear was collapsing in real time. The bullies were cuffed. The muscle was gone. But the queen was still standing. And if I wanted true justice, I had to take the castle. 2 nights later, the emergency HOA meeting was called. The clubhouse was packed wall-to-wall. Fear, anger, and morbid curiosity filled the air. Every seat was taken. The board sat up front, pale and stiff. And in the president's chair sat Karen Carson. Perfect suit. Painted face. But her mask was cracking. She tried to spin the story. Misunderstandings. Community unity, but nobody bought it. When she called my name, silence dropped heavy over the room. I walked up front, my pulse steady. Tina beside me, laptop ready. Good evening, I began. My name is Jake Miller. My family has lived here 5 years. And in those years, this HOA has claimed it protects our property values. But tell me, what's the value of a home where you live in fear? Heads nodded. Faces tightened. The crowd was with me. Karen slammed her gavel. This is not the place for grievances. Oh, it is, Karen, I said deliberately, meeting her eyes. And I have evidence. Tina hit the keys. One by one, the videos played Kyle sneaking into yards, harassing kids, stealing from my mailbox. Then Frank and his thug pounding on my door. The neighbors gasped. Murmurs grew. Anger rose. By the end, the room exploded. Stories poured out: fines for wheelchair ramps, threats over basketball hoops, liens placed illegally. Decades of fear boiling over. Karen's gavel pounded uselessly. Order! This meeting is adjourned. But nobody listened. The gavel was just wood now. Her power was gone. The people weren't afraid anymore. Her reign was over. And as I watched her crumble, abandoned by her own board, I knew one thing. This fight wasn't just mine. It belonged to every neighbor who'd ever been silenced. That's why I share these stories. Because HOAs like this don't just ruin property values. They ruin lives. If you've been through something like this or just want to hear more HOA takedowns, make sure to subscribe to Litton HOA Stories. More battles are coming, and you don't want to miss how they end. The very next day, the board called an emergency executive session. By the end of it, Karen Carson was stripped of her title as president and suspended from the board while a full investigation played out. Her access to HOA accounts? Immediately frozen. Their first move without her? A unanimous vote to hire an outside forensic accountant, not just an auditor, but someone who could perform a financial autopsy, and I knew exactly who to call. Through a friend, I connected with a retired IRS agent who now specialized in forensic accounting. He was mild in manner, glasses perched on his nose, but behind those lenses was the gaze of a hawk. Numbers weren't just data to him, they were trails, and he could follow them to the bone. While he tore into the HOA's books, the law kept grinding forward. Kyle's juvenile case for mail tampering was now in the hands of the U.S. Postal Inspection Service. His parents scrambled for lawyers with eye-watering fees. Frank Carson and his partner were hit with charges of assault, harassment, and most damaging impersonating security officers, which in our state carried teeth. But the real detonation was still ticking. 2 weeks later, the accountant called me. His tone was heavy. "You were right," he said. "It's worse than you imagined," and he wasn't exaggerating. Maplehurst Security Services was just the doorway. What he uncovered was a whole maze of shell companies, everyone tied to Karen's relatives. Carson Family Landscaping billed $10,000 a month for work our previous provider had done for a fraction. Evergreen Pool Maintenance, owned by her cousin, invoiced for chemicals that never arrived and repairs that never happened. And then there was a $5,000 monthly consulting fee straight into a company with Karen listed. As the sole owner, she wasn't just skimming off the top. She was siphoning the HO at dry hundreds of thousands of dollars funneled into her family's accounts. The final report? Over 100 pages, packed with fraudulent invoices and illicit transfers. The new board marched it straight to the district attorney. Paired with Detective Miller's evidence, it was a slam dunk. The DA filed a barrage of charges: embezzlement, fraud, grand larceny. And when the IRS received an anonymous package containing that full forensic report, they opened their own investigation for tax evasion. Backed into a corner, Karen tried one last dirty trick. Her slick attorney, clearly costing her a fortune, tried enforcing the bogus liens she had slapped on Mr. Chun, Mrs. Gable, and even us. It was a desperate Hail Mary, a scare tactic to make us drop our civil suits. But it was her biggest misstep yet. We all stood together in court. Our attorney, sharp and unflinching, was ready. As Karen's lawyer started arguing, she simply handed the judge a copy of the forensic audit. The judge read in silence for 10 long minutes. Her face hardened with every page. Then she looked up first at Karen's attorney, then at Karen herself. "Are you truly bringing this before me?" she asked, her voice like ice. "You attempt to foreclose on homes, one for a basketball hoop, another for a wheelchair ramp, while your client was allegedly stealing hundreds of thousands of dollars from these very families?" Karen's lawyer faltered, but the judge cut him off cold. "All liens dismissed with prejudice," she declared, slamming the gavel. "Which means they will never, ever see this courtroom again. And as for you," her gaze pinned Karen's lawyer, "I am sanctioning you for this malicious stunt. Your client will pay every family's legal fees. She has wasted their time, this court's time, and she has twisted the law in the ugliest way imaginable." The gavel cracked like thunder. And with that, her final weapon, turning the law itself into a sword, was shattered. Her fortune drained. Her reputation destroyed. Her freedom slipping away. All that was left for us was to start living again. 6 months later, Maple Court felt like a different world. The peace wasn't forced anymore, it was real. On a warm spring Saturday, fresh-cut grass sweetened the air. Kids filled the cul-de-sac with laughter and street hockey. No one measured inches. No one scribbled notes. The new board had even held a bonfire weeks earlier, tossing Karen's petty bylaws into the flames. For the first time in years, neighbors cheered together. We weren't subjects anymore. We were a community again. Tommy waved from his porch, a huge flag above him. Beautiful day, Jake. No fines for patriotism. He was right. Tina and I swayed on our new porch swing, iced tea in hand, watching Max play. The fear had left him. He skated, missed a shot, and laughed. The court battles were finished. Karen pled down to shorten her sentence, but prison still awaited. The IRS bared its teeth. She and her husband sold their home to repay the HOA, the neighbors, and the taxmen. A young couple with a toddler moved into that house. A fresh start. Weeks later, we received a check, our share of the settlement. It covered the lawyers and the sleepless nights. The rest we donated to a group helping at-risk kids. Turning something rotten into something good felt like closure. I leaned back. The swing chains creaked above me. For months I'd asked myself one question: how far will a man go to defend his family? Now I knew. You go as far as necessary, not further. You don't become the bully. You don't break the law. You fight with truth, with proof, with paper. And in the end, that's how you win. You stay steady. You stay cautious. You protect your own with patience. You fight for peace, not payback. That's what truly carried us through. Not the shouting matches, but the quiet persistence, the phone set to record, the dates scribbled down, the simple refusals at the door, the whispered conversations with neighbors finding their courage, the undeniable truth revealed when it mattered most. I reached for Tina's hand. She gave it a gentle squeeze, her smile calm and warm. Our eyes drifted to Max, to our street, to the sunlight glinting off rooftops, sticks clicking on pavement, a dog barking somewhere down the block. Just the ordinary sounds, the ones that matter most. What we gained was bigger than any courtroom victory over Karen Carson. We gained this moment, this porch, this ease. The right to live without fear. The right to watch kids play freely in the street and think about nothing at all. Every file, every phone call, every deep breath, it was all worth it. Worth the stand we took at our door. Worth the careful, deliberate road we walked. Because it led us here, to peace, to the quiet joy of simply being. And if you've been with me through this journey, know this: there are more stories like this one. Real battles. Real neighbors. Real victories. Subscribe to Lytton HOA Stories and be here for the next chapter.